into it, man. Let's get into the first topic here. And what I'm going to do, guys, is put the link up on the screen so you can find this article. Good morning to you too, O, for this. Glad to see you, buddy. So this article here, like I said, was Bill Huber tweeted it out. It's actually written, I believe, by Jacob Westendorf, if I remember correctly. And they just kind of talk about some of the defensive free agents. Now, we've given our cheat sheet. You guys in our Patreon group, you already have access to that. We got a cheat sheet of our favorite free agents available. They're going to talk about 4 that you'll notice I didn't mention because I haven't really dove into edge much. But one of the players, one of the 4 makes a list from our list at defensive tackle, obviously. I haven't really dove into edge that much until we make a decision on Rashan Gary. I kind of feel like if they decide to move forward with Gary on a restructured deal, there's a good chance they won't spend any more money in the edge room, just throw him on the bench. To have Gary sit on the bench for a significant cap hit right now. If they move on from Gary, I think all bets are off. All right, now might be in the market to get an edge defender, although they may just choose to stick with our boy LV in there and just say, hey, this is the guy of the future too. That could happen. So, all right, so I'm going to dive into the article. Again, this was written by Jacob Westendorf about 11 hours ago, and the title is Ring-Chasing Defensive Lineman Could Push Packers to a Super Bowl. All right, and I won't read it word for word. I'm going to kind of give you guys the gist of everything here. It says Green Bay Packers general manager Brian Gutekunst was adamant about a couple of things in the season-ending news conference. First of all, he does not view the age of 30 as some point of no return for players. Secondly, he does not think the age of this team, it was the youngest in the league for a third consecutive year, had anything to do with the struggles in closing out games. This is where I pause for dramatic effect and go, yeah, I think we all agree that the youth on the team played a role in how this team collapsed. I mean, what else could it be? What else could it be? Because you've now said that, hey, no, it's actually not the coaching staff. We like the coaching staff. It's not the players we have on the roster, right? Goody's basically said we've got everything we need to win a championship. Okay, it's just we just need to figure out how to close games. Like it's this something that the rest of the league has never figured out, Jacob. It's in the background somewhere, and it's like, man, no one can figure out how to close these close games. And then you look up at the teams that close out the close games, and they've got a lot more veteran presence than the youngest roster in the league, right? So again, I think it's kind of a silly thing for Goody to say. Now, he's not going to come out there and go, hey, guys, I screwed the pooch. We should have more veterans on the team. He's not going to say that, right? Because you're obviously taking a shot at the players on your roster. You don't want to do that to the locker room. And also you're kind of admitting, hey, I don't know what the heck I'm doing to a certain extent, right? So that's not a good look either way. But, Jacob, we've covered that pretty extensively. I'm going to continue to dive into the article. I want to get your take on that, though.
Yeah, it's kind of like how Chester's saying right here, time to be not the youngest roster, windows close. I agree with that. What's a little bit scary to think about is, I'm not sure if we'd end up bringing Zane Anderson back or Rashan Gary, which are 2 of our oldest players again. So just losing those 2, if that's how it ends up shaking out, and with us having a decent amount of draft picks this year, I think we could be looking at the same exact scenario, unfortunately, going into next year, possibly being the youngest, if not maybe another top 5 younger team in the NFL again.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, going on, it says, a quote from Goody here, I wouldn't say that's a line of demarcation at all. I think obviously we went through a period of time where we were kind of growing with these young guys, and I would expect these guys to kind of turn into those guys, Goody said. To Gutekunst, older players can delay younger players progress. Sometimes, particularly where we have been in the past few years, if you have a lot of those guys you're talking about, these other guys don't get to play and progress, right? And he went on to say, and they have now. We've been young in number for a couple of years, but not in experience. And my rebuttal to that is always, what do you mean by we're not young and experienced? What does that mean? Like how many of these players have played in a playoff game, right? And there's a significant amount of number of players on this team that's played in playoff games, right? Okay. How many of them have played in a conference championship game? How many of them have played in a Super Bowl? I don't think there's anybody. I could be wrong, other than Darian Kennard. Maybe I'm wrong. This might be a good thing to troubleshoot or jump into. How many players on the Packers roster have played in a Super Bowl, right? And it's not that that's the line where, okay, you've got to have those players who played in the Super Bowl. The point is, when you say, well, they've already got experience, what experience getting knocked out of the first round? Is that what we're talking about? Because at some point, you've got to acknowledge we keep doing the same thing over and over again, and it's not getting us over the hump. Again, that's just kind of my 2 cents on it. He goes on to say, if we're taking Gutekunst said his word that age is not a factor in trying to find players to help them help them be a championship team. Could the Packers be on the hunt for some players chasing the championship? Perhaps it was best said by former Philadelphia Eagles center Jason Kelce in his speech during the parade after they won the Super Bowl. Hungry dogs run faster. Here are some players who could be hungry to chase a championship with the Packers with a clear theme emerging. The first one on the list here, Jacob, is edge defender Khalil Mack. Before the Micah Parsons trade, there was a near miss on Khalil Mack trade from the 2018 season. Gutekunst was reportedly in on trying to acquire Mack before losing him to the Bears at the last minute. Mack was the defensive player of the year in 2018, and the Bears won the division before losing on the infamous double doink in the postseason against the Eagles. You got to love Jacob Westendorf sneaking that little cheap shot in there. Got to love it. Mack has since bounced from the Bears to the Chargers in hopes of finding that elusive championship ring that has evaded him in what could be a Hall of Fame career. Jacob, what do you think about bringing in a Khalil Mack? And in my opinion, if you decide to cut bait with Rashan Gary, you move on from him. If you move on from Rashan Gary, you're going to free up. If you go pre-June 1, you're going to free up $11 million. If you go post-June 1, you're freeing up 19.5. That would definitely give you the cap space you need to sign somebody like a Khalil Mack.
I actually love the idea. I think he's about 34, if I remember right. Had a little bit, I think, a couple elbow maybe issues last year, but I think he still had a pretty decent stat line, if I'm not mistaken. I think he graded out pretty well in PFF, I think, somewhere in the mid-80s, if not high 80s, I believe. And he just seems like one of those guys, much like a Bobby Wagner or, just guys that have been there long enough where I don't think they're, even them on a decline is better than some guys around there, like even 25 to 28, years of age kind of range. And if we can get him for a decent price point, it'd be unbelievable to think about having Mack on one side and Parsons on the other, and then with a heavy rotation of guys like LVN and, my boy Brandon Cox, of course.
Yeah. Now, to push back a little bit, the article goes on to say Mack has been a workhorse in his career. He's coming off a season of just 5.5 sacks in 12 games, but had been a Pro Bowler in the previous 3 seasons of 110 edge rushers with at least 150 pass rushing attempts. He was a solid 34th in pass rush win rate, ahead of Gary, who was 56th, okay, and Enigbare, who was 75th. I was told that Enigbare played better than Gary. That's interesting, according to Pro Football Focus, but behind Lucas Van Ness, who was 28th. So, again, it's not just like, wow, Mack's going to get you 12, 13, 14 sacks, right? He's coming off a year where he only had 5.5 and played in 12 games. He turns 35 in about a week. He played for $18 million last year. So for me, I personally would not like to see them sign Mack. I would rather see LVN than Khalil Mack save the money, even if you do move on from Rashan Gary. But I do think Rashan Gary being here or not being here would trigger whether or not they would sign someone like Khalil Mack. Now, moving on to the next player, it says edge defender Hassan Reddick. Speaking of edge rushers chasing the championship, how about someone who had the best season of his career under new defensive coordinator Jonathan Gannon? All right. The 2022 Eagles defense had an elite pass rush that powered them to Super Bowl, whatever it was. And anytime I see the Roman numerals, I just go, I ain't even going to try to figure that out. We're just going to the Super Bowl here. And the man who led that team in sacks was Reddick. Reddick had 16 sacks during the regular season and 3.5 sacks in the postseason that year as the Eagles fell just short of a championship. Reddick added 11 sacks for the Eagles in 23 as an encore, but had only 3.5 sacks the last 2 seasons with the Jets in 2024 and the Buccaneers in 2025, perhaps reuniting with Gannon and a team that expects to make the postseason would unlock Reddick's pass rush ability. This is a player, Jacob, I haven't looked at too much into, but he's definitely got ties to Jonathan Gannon and had some good success in Philly under Jonathan Gannon, and that's Hassan Reddick. How would you feel about that one, man? And by the way, it does say his projected contract value is $5.7 million, according to Over the Cap. So I know how you like your deals over there, buddy.
I do. And he's been another one of those guys that's played pretty consistently through his career. I think, like you said, the ties to Gannon are interesting there. I think if I'm reading this right, he only had 31 total tackles, 18 solo, had 2.5 sacks, but had a forced fumble that was on 13 games. So he may have been a little bit dealing with some injuries as well. I like the idea of bringing in a guy like that. Again, like you said, if the price point's the right way, I just want to build depth and have more of a veteran presence like we've talked about.
Yeah. And another player that would bring you that veteran presence would be edge defender Joey Bosa. Jacob Westendorf goes on to say, if you're sensing a theme here, you're keeping up. Joey Bosa went to Buffalo last season to chase the championship with Josh Allen after being released by the Chargers. It did not work out as the Bills were bounced in the divisional round. Bosa had 47 pressures and 5 sacks for the Bills, finishing 22nd in pass rush win rate. Bosa's issue in his career has rarely been production, but rather a struggle to stay healthy. He's missed 43 games in his career due to various ailments, but has not missed more than 3 games over the last 2 seasons. It doesn't say nothing about his projected market value. I'm kind of out on Bosa. How do you feel about Bosa?
Yeah, it's tough because when he's on. But like the article talks about, he played 15 games last year. Had 29 total tackles, 17 solo, did have 5 sacks and did have 5 forced fumbles, which is something that we could have definitely used. Again, kind of a name that's flashy and that sounds really, really good on paper. But, I mean, he has durability issues, but not necessarily the last 2 seasons. Like I said, 15 games and then played in 14 games the year before. I wouldn't hate it. I'll say it like that. But it's not necessarily my first choice for sure.
Yeah. Now, next on the list here from Jacob Westendorf, and again, this link is on the screen right here. You guys can go to Twitter, find it, retweet that out from Bill Huber. Make sure you guys give that a click. Defensive tackle Calais Campbell, we talked about him, right? He's one of our top free agents we'd like to see added to this team. I feel like it's more important to shore up defensive tackle than it is edge because you've got Micah on one side. We need a constant, whether it's a 2-man rotation, a constant rush of somebody in the 3-tech opposite of Micah Parsons. That's going to force them to, hey, you can't double team both, and you should be able to get pressure on the quarterback. If they decide to double team Micah Parsons, which we know they will, now all of a sudden the pressure is coming a lot closer to the quarterback. And you ask any quarterback throughout the history of the game, they would much rather face pressure off the edge than right in their face, right? So with all that being said, if you go defensive tackle Calais Campbell, I feel like that makes more sense. Or maybe someone like David Onyemata, maybe someone like Logan Hall, an up-and-comer, a guy that I feel like is an ascending player. He may not show it right now, but he is showing some signs of, hey, this guy might be a stud next year or maybe the year after. And again, another one was Levi Ozarike, however you say it, from the Detroit Lions as well. Some people like DJ Reader. I'm not as big on DJ Reader. That's just me personally. But with Calais Campbell, he said, moving away from outside pass rushers, let's move to the defensive line. Would Brian Gutekunst truly add one of the oldest players in football? Who knows? But what we do know is that age is just a number for Calais Campbell, who continues to hold off Father Time to remain an impact player. I feel like we've been talking about Calais Campbell for a decade now, and every time it's always, well, is he too old, though? Is he too old? And he just continues to play well, right? In his return to Arizona, obviously with Jonathan Gannon, the team that drafted him in 2008, the 39-year-old piled up 6.5 sacks and 33 pressures. Campbell played for Jonathan Gannon last season and only played for $5.5 million. If he were in that price range, again, the Packers might take a shot at a living legend player who remains a 3-down defender. They could use some reinforcements on the interior defensive line, which was gutted by injuries and inconsistency by the end of the season. Now, I want to point this out, Jacob. People always say he's too old. Okay, what does that matter if he's playing good football? Well, he's going to get hurt, really, because he outsnapped Wyatt last year.
He hasn't.
Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. He's only missed 3 games in the last 4 years.
Right. So
it's been 17, 14, and then 15 before that. So that's crazy.
Now, could this be the year it happens? It could. It could always be the year it happens. But again, we keep walking down this same path of, no, we need to stay young. We need to stay young because this is a young man's game and health is a big issue. Well, you're showing that these veterans have learned how to stay healthy and how to be available, as opposed to some of these young guys that play a bit reckless and just play themselves out of the lineup with injuries constantly, right? I think it's something that comes into play big time. So again, you guys make sure you go check out that article over there. Like I said, Bill Huber tweeted it out. Jacob Westendorf wrote it. Awesome article. It's over at si.com. And make sure you give those guys a follow. If you're following us, I promise you're following them. But let us know in the comments if you're watching this back later. How do you feel about what was mentioned in that article? How do you feel about those 4 potential free agents? Maybe you see edge defender as more important than defensive tackle. We want to hear from you in the comments. Make sure you hit like, subscribe, click the bell icon so you catch all the live streams here in the future.